Okay, team, welcome back to the Anchor of the Week, where we have hard conversations, hear people's stories, and challenge perspectives. My name is Zach.
And I'm Courtney.
And we are coming at you with a one-off episode today, team. We are going to be talking about expectations versus...
being expected.
Boom! Look at that. Tag team. Even though I forgot the second half of that.
You know, we could have made it seem like it was a rehearsed thing, but that's
could've.
okay. Thank you for your humility.
Yeah.
So,
Anyway, gang, this is a super interesting subject.
Yeah.
We kind of came up with it a little bit last minute, but actually there's like quite a bit to say about this, isn't
Well,
there?
the thing is that we came up with it because we were like, okay, like what are we going to talk about in the podcast this week? And literally we just started talking about things that, we'd seen or like...
even things that are going on
in our lives,
yeah,
and then all of a sudden, and I love these conversations though, because then we just started talking about things and just spitballing everything and just seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
Then we saw kind of this line of continuity almost of wait, does all of this come down to having expectations?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so excited.
It is. It's good. Yeah. Yeah. Let's differentiate the two.
Good one.
Yeah. There we go. Got that out. Because obviously, when you're expectant, I feel like there's a flexibility behind it, isn't there?
Yeah.
And it's and there's hope behind your whatever's coming up next with whatever area you're expectant in.
Yeah.
And then having expectations is you're basing things off of a certain standard, and you're expecting this certain situation or whatever it is in your life to end up at this certain place. And we found when you have expectations, there's actually that standard is what determines whether something is good or or whether it's something's bad, hasn't it? And so I don't know if that's a good thing. I mean, we're going to dive into that a little bit, but yeah, what are your initial...
Yeah, well, I think it's actually very interesting because I feel like a lot of people, we go through life without being aware of our expectations, Okay. And so I feel like sometimes we have super high expectations or super low expectations, which I think are both, we can dive into all of that.
Yeah.
But it's I feel like a lot of times we can't even verbalize what our expectations are because we're not even aware that we have them. But we're subconsciously measuring things in our head, But I think as well are oh, I want to be expectant. I want to believe that good things are going to happen or whatever. Can become expectations when they're unchecked. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I also think, well, apparently I have a lot of things that I think here. Our experiences. Oh, here I am again with confirmation bias. I didn't expect this.
No.
Wow.
Mine too.
But here we are. Do you know what I mean? I keep on expecting things this is going to happen this way, and it doesn't. So without even consciously thinking about it, I'm well, that's not going to happen that way. So I should stop expecting that.
Right.
I'm going to start crying.
Okay, well...
I'm just kidding. I won't. Maybe not. Maybe later. Who knows?
Okay, well...
we have 25 minutes left in the episode.
I hope not.
Inner healing with Courtney.
Okay, yes. Anyway, yeah, look, I mean... yeah, it is interesting because when we were discussing this, even the first thing that you thought of, with having expectations is you thought about in a relational sense, right?
Yes.
So within your relationships that you have, friendships, etc.
Yes.
And for me, it was more to do with what's gonna happen from what I produce almost, or
physical,
ministries that I'm doing or
goals
or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's much more to do with what I do, and yours was much more to do with
the people that I love. Yes.
Oh wow, okay, yeah, when you word it like that. But even that is so interesting.
I know.
I mean, I think...
I'm how much of that is female brain, female brain?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, interesting, maybe.
Honestly, could be a thing.
Maybe, actually, yeah. I never thought of that. But I think it'll probably change depending on what I'm currently going through in my life a little bit,
yeah.
maybe. But
yeah.
But even that alone is so interesting that you straight away it was different the way we related having expectations and what we categorize that with.
Because I would say it's priorities as well, but then you're a very relational person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You definitely prioritize relationship, and I'm also a very task driven person, so I wouldn't even say it's necessarily priorities.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No.
I don't know why, but
do you think there's okay, this is deep, but I don't know if this has anything, but so to do
tissues?
No, no, to do with our identity almost, or what we put
are worth it.
Yeah.
I think it has to be, or if expectations, if I think everyone can agree that if an expectation is met, things are going well, right? Like that's kind of like a general thing.
Keeps us going.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So if my relationships are okay, then I'm okay.
Yeah.
Is it codependence? Is this what it is? How many of my buzzwords can we take off in one episode?
That is so interesting though, actually. Yeah. Because I feel like when those expectations aren't met, for example, with the things that I'm doing, then that like definitely shakes me, you know?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is it because we don't feel like we can meet like our role, maybe?
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Because I feel like my role in like a lot of my life like has that relational focus.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, even though I am super task driven, like whatever, just the role, my responsibilities and all of these different things, like I feel like people know that they can come to me, that they can whatever, like, like that is a huge part of, I think, who I am, you know?
Right.
So if I don't know.
That is so interesting.
It is so interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so what does being expectant look like then? Obviously having expectations and then like, because you would see, it feels like to me, the first thing I would think of like having expectations actually is not a good thing.
Well, but here's the thing.
Right.
Okay, but like I feel like when you measure your life, I think that's what I'm trying to say, based on like expectation, that's where it gets whatever. But like, for example, sometimes like saying your expectations or like clarifying them and communicating them is like the best thing ever. Right? Because think about like a job interview. I'm just thinking about this right now. Okay, what are your expectations for me in this role? You know, I'm applying for this job. What do you expect of me? And to have these clear communication, you know, like,
right.
I think in that sense, like it's amazing. And so I think a lot of times like there's miscommunication and like relationships get like harmed or whatever because expectations are not communicated.
Right.
You know, like I expect you to, I don't know, give me space when I'm mad.
Yeah.
I don't know. Something like that.
Yeah.
You know, but if I don't communicate that expectation, you know, and so I feel like this is kind of like a side part of that. Like it's more like the practical. And I think we need to talk about that as well. Because I feel like we're talking about expectations and kind of like a big general like of life sort of a thing. Like what I want to get out of life. But I also think like in the day to day, we have these little expectations. But if we're not communicating them, like they're not bad necessarily. You know? Yeah. But if I'm expecting something from you and I don't tell you what that is, how can I get mad at you for not doing it?
Right, yeah.
Even though I do.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, there's so much going on here. So,
I chose chaos this morning.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I think it's like, because I'm also thinking of like, I associate it as a negative thing because then it's like, if those expectations aren't met, then obviously it's like, oh, this has not ended up good or it's not been a positive time or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's almost like that, the role of like having expectations and like what role that plays, I think determines whether it's good or not.
Healthy expectations and unhealthy.
I mean, for sure, yeah.
You know?
But I think a healthy expectation would be it's almost like to be expectant.
Or
I guess having
a standard.
Yeah, I guess.
Something that we like briefly talked about with the crew. Right? Like,
right. Yeah.
If I expect you to do the bare minimum, I'm holding you to a very low standard. Yeah. That's not honoring me and that's not honoring you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 But then
where do our standards come from?
Well, I think that's the big question is like, where do these standards come from? Because, you know, we like, this is, I don't know if this is an example that people will be able to relate with, but obviously like when we run schools and things like that, like, you know, we've had moments where like people will come
training programs with the church that we're partnering with.
Yeah.
That's the context.
That is the context, yeah. And like, you know, people come in and it won't meet every expectation that they've had. And I think their time then is determined by that. And I think like that's a very classic example of like how those expectations were almost used in a negative way, I would say.
Yeah, well, yeah, 100%. But I think that's why it's like you have to look at your expectations and see if is this causing me to be expectant or is this causing me to be like judgmental?
Right.
Like nothing in life is gonna like judgmental is not a good thing to have or to be or to whatever. I think we can all agree on that from whatever walk of life you're from. Like no one wants to be judgmental. Yeah. And I think everyone can agree that is an unhealthy like characteristic. Yeah. You know, so if my like expectations are causing me to be judgmental, then no.
Okay. So let's shift it then to like the idea of hope, because we touched on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And obviously like the whole question of where do our expectations come from? Now, do they come from a sense of hope, or do they come from a sense of like
fear?
Yeah. And like that insecure aspect of things.
Also, yes. I just thought of something else as well. I feel like sometimes we set expectations like as a defense mechanism, because we know that they will never be met, therefore we'll never get disappointed.
Right. So you don't aim high, basically.
You don't aim high, or you aim too high. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Keep going with that, because...
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the classic, right? Like girls setting like these standards, these expectations for their future husbands, right?
Yeah.
We like make these whole big lists of dream men that do not exist. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And we're like, oh, I just have high standards. It's like, well, actually, no, that's a self-protection mechanism. Right. Because you are like, no, that man literally does not exist. So therefore, if you're holding up for this guy that does not exist, you will not get your heart broken by anyone in between.
Right. Interesting.
Anyway.
Okay, interesting.
And some of us just have low standards, and that's opposite, but the same thing. That's everyone can just swash me around, you know what I mean? Like, who cares? Like,
so that comes from, I guess, that's
fear. It's all based in fear, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Interesting.
It is so interesting.
Cool. Trying to think of an example for a guy, but maybe
I think everyone can relate to that, or at least can pull something from
right.
that. You know, when you set a standard so high that you can't achieve it. Or it's like people that set these amazing goals, or like, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this, but they're all like super long-term, super whatever. And it's like unreachable, but they don't set any like short-term goals, right? Because that's where you can actually fail. But if you set something so high and so lofty, there's no failing because you know you can never actually get there. But it's like the standard. You know?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Okay, so obviously that's like from a place of insecurity and stuff like that. Because I think there's like, I don't know, when we think of having expectations for something, it's like initially I would think that as a good thing. So what, like at some point throughout the process, it becomes unhealthy, right? Or, I mean, there's obviously healthy versions of it. Yeah. But like in that process of having expectations and like, you know, for example, I'm doing something, I'm leading a project or a ministry or something. I'm like, yeah, this is what I expect this to be in a year's time, yada, yada, yada. Like throughout that year, like when does that become something that you think is like, right, this is now, like I'm holding on to this in the wrong way?
Well, I don't think there's like 5 warning signs.
Well, no, but like, I think there's like, I would say there's like some clear aspects of it being like, okay, well, just off the top of my head, I mean, yeah. Like, for example, if it's like something that, this is so funny. This is so funny. Anyway, like, so if this is something that like, almost like, I guess the way you like hold on to it in the process of it. And it's like, if this is going to meet those standards, then like I've done well. I've lived up to the potential of something. And then if it doesn't work out, then I'm like, I like confused about like, okay, like was this success almost? It's like I base like success off of like
the outcome.
Yeah. Of the expectation. And I think that's when it's like a blurry line for me. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that's so interesting. I don't know. Thinking about it now, it's like, it's a bit subjective really, actually.
I think it's super subjective. And what I said at the beginning is I think a lot of it is like more subconscious than we realize. Yeah. You know? And I think there should like a lot to be said for that. But I feel like part of the reason and part of the, I don't know, the point of like talking about this is like, so we actually can communicate our expectations, even if they're like with ourselves. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Being like, wow, I actually have like these expectations for this right now. You know, like, is that healthy? Is that good? Like, I don't know. I think we just have to, but we always talk about this, literally like every episode. You know, but being aware and like thinking critically and actually being like, okay, like I'm not just going to let some unknown force in my subconscious kind of like direct my life or like, do you know what I mean? Or like, I'm not going to be a victim to these thought patterns that I've been having or, you know? Yeah. No, that's good. Okay. So having those expectations and then like, cause I think of like those expectations and like the end goal and it's almost like, I feel like it relates to like perfection and it relates to like the perfect picture. And it's so interesting how like life is not like that at all, right? Like I can't think of
any area that's like perfect in the sense.
Yeah.
So it's so funny that I'm like setting those like expectations of like, this is going to be great. And then like when that doesn't happen, it like, it shakes people, doesn't it? Or like it makes people be like, oh man, this is not good.
I mean.
And it's like not successful.
It's control. Like when you said it so plainly, I was like, oh yeah, we're all just trying to control our circumstances.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
That's fair.
Maybe that's not all it is. It's a lot.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. Yeah.
You know, and so I set expectations because I feel like I can kind of control. And so when things are out of our control, we freak out. But that's why I think being expectant starts out so nice and like idealistic, but then life gets a bit tough. So then we start to control.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, it's hard, honestly, to live in like a constant state of being expectant, right? Because it's like, as we said, like life happens, things happen.
Right.
You know, and things disappoint us or things look hopeless or we have heartbreak or all of these different things, you know, life gets out of control. And so it's hard to be like, oh, yeah, I expect, you know, that maybe I don't know exactly how it's going to look, you know, but, you know, it's going to happen or I believe this is, you know, a promise I'm going to follow through and all this stuff. But like life is life. But how do we choose then to like continue to have that mindset when everything is being like, I don't know, kind of coming against it or being like, oh, that's dumb to be expectant. Right. And I feel like sometimes people feel like they're naive to be expectant. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, so interesting. Because I think like naturally, like, I mean, some people call it toxic positivity, but some people call it positive mindsets to something. But like naturally, like I'll try and be very like extra about things and very like positive in the sense of like, nah, it's all good, like blah, 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 blah. And like, I'm trying to think of like people who don't like naturally, like they're a bit more like real maybe.
Realists,
Yeah. Realists. Is that how they're categorized?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so, and I wonder what that relates to because for me, I'm like, I just love the idea of trying to live in hope anyway. Yeah. Like that's like my picture of like, now I'm sure you could point out a few other things that's maybe not good or whatever, but I make you sound so bad, but I can just tell you're thinking of a few things now anyway. But like genuinely, that's the hat I try and have with like any situation, and so I try and be
it's like silver lining. Yeah,
you know, and I'm like, right, well, let's be hopeful. Like that, we can't just live our lives in the sadness of reality.
Believe it or not, I used to be like that too.
Right.
Used to be. But then life happened.
Well, yeah, I mean, anyway, this. No. Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm in any better spot than you are.
No. Yeah.
It's very admirable.
So. Okay, well, don't make this weird. So
that's what I do.
Okay, well, so what is that like with those like realists? Like, do you think it's a lack of hope, or do you think it's more?
I think part of it's personality.
Okay.
Like, I don't want to just be like everyone's like woo. Like some people just have an easier time. I think part of it's personality. I think part of it is experience, background. Like even family dynamic. How did you grow up in like what kind of atmosphere, what kind of culture, family culture, school culture did you grow up in? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I also think like with our natural tendencies, then we tend to fall into the extreme of them. So if you're like naturally someone that's like more hopeful, then you'll kind of go more into that toxic positivity, you know, or like refusing to see any issues. Yeah. Right, you know? Right. And if you're someone that's like really good and needed at like, you know, okay, let's look at this realistically. Like, what are we actually dealing with here? What are we actually working with here? Yeah. Then that could kind of fall into well, it is what it is. This is just life. Deal with it. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. But maybe, just maybe, we can meet in the middle somewhere.
Yeah. Okay, so, like, let's, like, go on to expectant then. Obviously, because we talked about having expectations. Yeah. Like, I see expectant as something that's like, it's not, there's no standard as such, or it's more like the standard is more loose in the sense of like, there's hope.
It's not a measuring standard. Yeah, like I'm not measuring worth or success or anything like that.
So you don't go, oh, this was successful or unsuccessful kind of thing. Like,
or if this does not meet my expectations, then
it means this. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's more like just, but they're also like ready for something good to come out, right?
And I think as well, like a lot of, I don't know, I would say a lot of people that struggle, but like when you have no expectations as well, like I feel like a lot of times, I just think we need to kind of like touch on that a little bit more as well. Not just like we have these high expectations instead of having that just be expectant. Yeah. But I think it's also very difficult to be expectant when you have no expectations. But I mean the same with both. high and low expectations.
Yeah.
But you don't have no expectations out of nowhere.
Right.
You know?
It comes from something. Yeah.
It comes from something. So then
Yeah.
it actually takes a lot to like work through.
Yeah.
To like be expectant again in a healthy way.
Right.
You know? And I don't know. I just feel like that needs to be
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
You know, that like having no standard, no expectation, like, I don't know. It's worth it to be expectant again. I promise.
It's like hopeful, isn't it?
Yeah, you know?
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's so hard to choose hope.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's fine or whatever, but like if you someone who've actually had to struggle with hope, you know, like, yeah, sometimes no expectations is just,
Yeah.
because you don't have to feel anything.
Well, that's tough, isn't it?
It's so tough.
That is so tough, man.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Being expectant, like we're not meant to, I don't like think we can live the fullness of life if we are not living expectant.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because then you're just getting by,
Right.
doing the bare minimum,
Yeah.
or setting the bar so high that you're essentially still doing the bare minimum.
Yeah. This is funny because now I don't know if this is going to relate anything at all to what we're talking about. But like recently in our house, so we've got a group of guys and like there's like good group of us that live in this house. And it's like, so we had like a house meeting recently and like some of the things that we were sharing, it was like this idea of like how we move in that house and the way we do things. It's like this question of like, are we prepared for like what is next or what's coming next, whatever that is, whether it's like a new responsibility or whatever, like, and like, so I think the way we move like actually says a lot, even in like just how we live at home. Now, not to make this as deep, but like even just the way we carry ourselves with like how we look after ourselves or how we look after the house, how we look after the person next to our, like even just our belongings or everything like that. It like says a lot. Like if we're kind of like numb almost, or just like we like gonna put this in the context of our house. Like if you just go home, you just as soon as you walk into that house, you just switch off completely and you're just doing your own thing and whatever else. And you've like, you know, not made a proper dinner, or you've not done this, or you've not washed whatever, and like things are just left unkept. I feel like that this whole idea of like the way you move in those small things actually says a lot about like how we're prepared for what's next. And I think it like relates to the whole idea of being expectant, because if I'm expectant, then I'm like almost like using whatever I have now to be like prepared. Like I'm like, it's like a time of like preparation almost.
Yeah.
And like I relate like the two a bit, because it's like, okay, because I'm expectant, because I'm like eager and hopeful, like I'm gonna look after what I have.
You can see the value in what you have now.
Right.
And I think
you treat it well.
when you're like living off expectations, it's well, when I get there,
yeah,
it will be whatever.
Right.
But when I think that's actually a good point. Hey, it did come around.
Yeah, it did.
Come around
I know I did a big loop, but there was something at the
I
end.
had a moment there where I just
Sorry, yeah, there's a lot.
like, imagine, how clean is that house?
Yeah.
But anyway,
boom.
yeah. But I think being expectant also makes us, I think, value things.
Yeah.
You know,
That's the
not
big
put
thing,
like our worth. I mean, that's another differentiation we can make, right? When you put like high expectations on things, you're putting your worth in things.
Yeah.
When you're expectant, you're living like valuing things.
Yeah.
And I think worth and value, which essentially synonyms, you know.
Yeah.
But maybe identity and more appreciation.
Right.
I don't know if those are ways that you can.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. Cool. Okay, team. So should we make this personal before we?
Let's make this personal.
I know it's been a bit personal, but
I feel like I've outed myself a lot today.
Like just to wrap it up a little bit, like what are you expecting for?
Oh God. Okay, so I'm someone that realized I had very low expectations, and I'm just starting to expect again. So I'm expectant to be expectant.
Okay, that's fair,
and that's all you're getting today.
Yeah, and that is great, and great answer.
Or the tissues will have to come out.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I mean, for me, what am I expecting of? Actually, I asked you this, and I was not even ready for this. I would say just because I relate it to the things that I'm doing, so I'll give an answer for that sort of thing. But yeah, wow, this is tough. I think I'm just expecting. Well, I want to be. I'm not saying that I'm in this place, but I think like I'm working through this place of like just this idea that like just to see God's hand in something. I think for me that's like a big deal, because it's like I feel like everything that I'm gonna do comes from like what I'm gonna do.
Like what you can do
what
yourself.
I'm capable of. Yeah, exactly. Like my own capabilities. But I think to see something be done through God's hand, I think is like, it's like a different gravy in it. Like different ball game, man. It's like, Anyway, like just.
And it goes to the whole control thing as well.
Yeah.
Out of your control.
Right. So it's like something I can't do. Something that I need God's help with. Yeah. That's what I'm expecting to see. Yeah.
Nice one.
Thanks.
Awesome. What do you guys expect?
Yeah.
Well, I wish, you could answer.
That's the question, isn't it? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, team, that is our chat. I hope it just like pokes and prods a few areas of like, what standards are we basing things off of is a good question. And even just the idea of being expectant and being hopeful and like how we're preparing for what's next. Don't know if you have any other poking questions like that, but
I think that's great.
Yeah. So, hope it challenged you, team. If you have any thoughts, we always like to hear feedback as well. So please let us know what you thought of that episode. Thank you so much for joining us at the Anchor of the Week, where we have hard conversations, hear people's stories, and challenge perspectives.
Remember, you can stay connected by following us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, as well as subscribing to our YouTube channel.
Hope these conversations are inspiring you to have hard convos as well.
We'll see you next time, and remember, attack topics and not people.